All right. Okay. All right. So we're finally live. We're live. I want to welcome our Facebook viewers and folks on YouTube TV. Thank you for tuning in. Please share your links and let folks get in on this conversation. If you have questions, please submit your questions via the comment box, and then we'll try to get those questions to the panelists as best we can. But as first, I want to welcome you to Moving People to Action, the People Rising. Tonight, we will take a look at policing and really what that looks like in terms of now, and mostly the time spent in terms of our future. What's our way forward? I want to welcome my co-facilitator host, Michael J. Fox. Michael Scott, the legendary news anchor. This is a very serious subject matter in terms of policing. I know you did some research and looked at really what's happening, but once you kind of set the tone for the conversation this evening, as we get ready to engage our panelists, Tony and Ricky, in terms of the first segment.
Okay. Well, as all of us know here, days of protests across the United States in the wake of George Floyd's death in the custody of Minneapolis police brought new attentions to questions about police officers' attitudes toward Black Americans, protesters, and others. Now, as Tim mentioned, I did do a little research. Actually, the Pew Research Center had some interesting work, and I had passed it on to Tim to share with any of you folks out there. One thing that really stood out, the majorities of both Black and white Americans say Black people are treated less fairly than whites in dealing with the police and by the criminal justice system as a whole. That first week in June here in Omaha, people took to the streets. I think one of the most surprising things about it was seeing that at least 70% of the people on the streets were not people of color, and they were young people who were taking to the street. That was a tough weekend for Omaha. We made national news because, as you all know, the following night, Saturday, a young man was killed, not by the police, but by someone supposedly protecting his business. There may need to be more training involved. I was on another one of these with Tim on Saturday, and somebody who lives down in, Kentucky, Breonna Taylor. Mm-hmm. This guy was like really on board saying, well, the police, they knew what they were getting into when they walked in there. And I said, they said they didn't know whether it was Black or white. And I said, yeah, they did. They knew it was a Black person because they were going with that information that they had. My only concern with that, and I should let you know, gentlemen of the blue and ladies of the blue, when I lived in Texas, I did a multi-week course on gun training. And if I walk into a room and someone fires a gun, I return to the sound or the flare of the gun. I don't fire at the person in the bed, because the one thing to remember about Breonna, her boyfriend never got hit. His girlfriend got hit. She got hit, 7 times? And that's a training problem when you just fire really willy-nilly into a room.
Do you mind if I just correct one thing? I think it's important if we're going to talk about that case to talk about some of the truths about the case. First of all, she wasn't in the bed, so that's a myth. She
was outside the bed, yes,
in the public. No, she was in the hallway, and right next to her boyfriend that fired. So I think it's important that we talk about some of the truth that's came out since some of the facts that came out about that case. Not that I'm trying to defend anybody's action. I'm just trying to make sure that we just tell a full story, because she wasn't just laying in bed and innocently sleeping, and the cops came in and shot her in the bed. That's just not true.
Okay. Is everything else correct?
I mean, that's important, Tony. I think in terms of just, and as you know, Michael, with your many years in the news, that so often we see it from afar. We see just from the TV, but I think it's important that we stop, especially in light of what's happening in this country in terms of the mistruths and all this information, that we really get back to what's facts versus opinions and all that craziness. And so I think when we have an opportunity to do that, I think we need to do that. What is the facts? You know, what Michael talked about in terms of just this whole thing of the Prue report and that whole thing of the confidence. And so let's talk there in terms of just how do we increase the confidence and trust of the police department, especially in the Black community? What if we start? Let's start there in terms of just this whole thing of confidence and trust. Of just what's our way forward in increasing that trust and confidence in the police department, especially in the Black community?
Yeah, well, first of all, I think that one of the things our department has prided themselves in our current police chief is hiring a diverse police force. And I think that that's one of the things that we can do starting off right away, is making sure that our police force represents the communities that we serve all across the entire country. Every city should strive for that. Another thing, I had the opportunity to speak to a group of it was a neighborhood association out in Western Omaha, and this young man was there, and probably not young, probably about my age, but we had a pretty long conversation about he had some negative contacts with the police, and we were able to have a pretty good discussion about that. One of the things I always try to explain to people is, as a police officer, when I'm at work, like obviously Tim, you know me, and Mike's been around me a little bit. Don't know me very well, but been around me a little bit. I hope people that know me know that I'm always laughing, joking. I'm a pretty friendly, funny guy. But when I'm at work as a police officer and I'm responding to a radio call, which there's so much unknown that police officers respond to, and the same thing with making a traffic stop. There's so much unknown. Your mindset is surviving that encounter. I mean, your mindset is a different mindset. I'm not as jokey and laughing at work until the situation is secure and I can now let my hair down a little bit, even with people in the public. So there has to be an understanding that when you have the opportunities as a community to come to the community service events that our department does, and I think our department, I know our department is head and shoulders above other departments in this country when it comes to that. We should be an example. We are an example to the rest of the country, and the rest of the country should look at what we do in Omaha. But anyway, come to those events. I think the community has to be intentional about coming to those events. Community leaders have to be intentional about inviting people to those events. Nonprofit organizations that have members in their organization, people that work with them, people that they're serving, invite those people to those events to know the police officers. I think the more you get to know us and get to know who we are as people, you'll first off recognize that we're humans. Just because I have a badge on doesn't mean that I'm less than human. I'm just as human as everyone else. I'm someone's dad. I'm someone's uncle. I'm someone's brother, just like anyone else. So I think that's important that the community get to know us and take those opportunities.
Tony, you were going to say something earlier about a comment I said that my dad made about in the 70s about a pig is a pig is a pig. Go ahead, expand on that.
Yeah, you're exactly. So what I was going to expand on that was I had a family member try to talk me out of becoming a police officer years ago when I first told him I was applying for the police department. I mean, it was a pretty heated discussion about why would I even consider this career? And I'm not perfect. I would never say I was ever perfect, even as a 20-year veteran now, but 18 years on the street. My entire career was on the street and patrol. But what I can look back on and know that I think I've made an impact, and I've had members of the community speak to me about either times I've stopped them or had contact with them. And I think even your former co-host mentioned me going to her house with her one of her children that were out of control or something along those lines, where she actually was appreciative of my service. So I think that 20 years later, I'm the first Black president of POA. I'm a police sergeant. There's a lot of things that would not have happened if I had listened to him, you know. So
you know, Tony, the thing that I remember when Tommy Warren became police chief, and I wasn't here, but I came back and I was going, "Ooh, we got a Black police chief. Things are going to change." But I noticed that when I see these news conferences across the country right now in places that are hot spots, and a lot of the police officials are either females or people of color. And I'm going, sometimes it's not black or brown or white, it's blue and black when it comes to
Well,
community. I mean, first of all, I guess we need to establish, do you, Ricky, are you on board now? Can you hear us? Do you guys perceive some kind of problem of communicating with the communities of color? Go for it, Ricky.
Well, I'm not a police officer, so I don't know.
You got to give it from the perspective of a community.
But as a liaison for the community and an advocate, I like being able to be that mediator. Whenever I approach somebody who was going through trauma, crisis, just had to deal with the police or don't necessarily police, I explain to them who I am and how we can kind of mediate and at least get some language going and some communication going in between both entities. And so, of course, in our community, it's the no snitch. I'm not talking to no cop. I'm not telling nothing. And so me being able to say, okay, so here's the thing. I'm not a police officer, but I do want to know what's happening. And I do want to tell you that as a family, if you're going through something, let's not just jump off and not think clearly and go and retaliate, for example. Give me whatever you want to give to me, and then I can try to work it on my end and share the information so that way it can get worked on the blue guy side. And again, we all want to come to a solution and keep peace in the community. But again, if you don't have that trust there with those officers, who can you kind of put in between to be a buffer? And I've had people approach me and say, I do not want a police car in front of my house, and so it's an easy, hey, officers, could you send a plainclothes gentleman to this residents, we'll get the info and we'll move forward. So it's just about being able to communicate and make sure the community feels comfortable working both of those lines.